Hi everybody, my name is Angie. Welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to be showing you how to self-draft your own pattern for bags or like fabric bins, zipper bags. This can kind of be a very broad topic or you can go any direction you want to go basically with it. So we're not going to use any software or anything like that. We're keeping it super basic. I am just really going to be showing you how you can take your idea of, I want a bag to be this size and these dimensions, and how to actually implement that, what size you need to cut the fabric to, that kind of stuff, and kind of how to map it out so that you know that you are cutting it to the right size so that it will be the finished size that you want. So it's going to be super basic. Like I said, I'm just going to kind of show you my thought process on how I go ahead and do that, and how I map this all out. So I am literally just going to be, I have a little notebook here, so I just kind of draw it out on the notebook first. It just helps me visualize, and I can write down exactly what I need to do, and then I can take that and put that into play with my fabric and cut it to the size that I need, based on what I figured out that I need to do. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'll show you what I do. All right, so my thought is I want to go ahead and make another one of these little fabric bins, but this one I made so long ago. I have no idea what dimensions I made to make it, and I also want to tweak it a little bit. Like, this is so tall. There's, a hand width, finger length of unused space in there. I don't need something that big, but I do like how wide it is. So I think I want to make one that's, probably the same width and length of it, but the height I only want to do maybe about there. So I am using this for reference, and going to use this to determine what dimensions that I want my bag to be. All right, so I think I want mine to be 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches. So that is wide and deep by 2.5 inches tall. All right, so those, geez, rude. All right, so these are the dimensions that we're going to be working with. This is what I want the end result to be. Now I need to determine what seam allowance we're going to use. So on this project, it's a very small project. I'm just going to make things simple and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So on every single seam, on every single side of this, there's going to be 2 different seam allowances, one on the top of the bin, one on the bottom, one on each of the sides. So that means that we need to double up this seam allowance and add that to every measurement that we have. So we have a 1/4 inch seam allowance multiplied by 2 is a 1/2 inch seam allowance that is going to be added to all sides of this. Now, typically when you're drawing out a bag, your image is going to look something like this, where we have it's a very rough drawing, where this here is going to be the actual width of the bag down here, not at the top, because we need to box the corners. So this bottom here is the actual width that you want your bag or bin to be. And then the height that you want your bag to be is going to be from here to here, because again, we're going to be boxing this corner here, and all of this is going to end up flattening out. So this is the actual height of the bag that you want. And then the width of your bag, or how big you want the boxed corners to be here, is half of this, or I'm sorry, is twice as much of the corners here. So if you wanted a 5 inch boxed corner, if you wanted this to be 5 inches here, you would need to cut out a 2.5 inch cutout in this spot here. So that's kind of the basic idea of what we're going for. So this is how we determine the height. So this is the height of the bag. This is the width of the bag. And then this is half of the depth of the bag. All right, so what I like to do is start with the bottom of the bag, so the width of the bag. And the width is going to be the width at the base of the bag. So we want our width to be 4.5 inches. So that's what we want the finished measurement to be. So we need to actually add in our seam allowance, 2 times the seam allowance, so that 1/2 inch. So we need to draw a 5-inch line. Now, I'm not trying to draw this to scale or anything like this. I'm just kind of giving it a rough draw here. Oh, that's not a straight line though. I should at least try and do that. All right, so let's say that's a 5-inch line. I am going to label it 5 inches. So that is how wide we need to cut the bottom of this bag. All right, so now we want to work on the depth of the bag. So we want the bag to be, so this is kind of like the boxed corner portion of it. And that part we want it to be 4.5 inches deep. Now, we have to divide that by 2 because we're going to have half of it over here and half of it over here. So we're just going to divide this by 2 and make that our boxed corner. And 4.5 divided by 2 is 2 1/4. So that is how wide we need to cut the little square over here. Can't write. Okay. And then we need to go on to our height. So 2.5 inches high. That is going to be, so that is the height of what we want the finished bag to be. But again, we need to add in the seam allowance. So we actually want to cut the fabric at 3 inches tall. I don't know how proportionate this is, but so we got 3 inches tall here, and then we can just go ahead and connect these. So this is the kind of the basic shape of what we want to cut this fabric to. So now in order to find the length of the top of the bag here, we need to go ahead and add this plus this plus this. So we have 2 1/4 plus 2 1/4 equals 4.5 plus 5 equals 9.5. Okay. So then we can go ahead and kind of trace this out onto our fabric just like this, or we can figure out what the actual like rectangle is, and you know, we would just need to add this length plus this length, which is 5 1/4. So from here to here is 5.25 inches. So if we wanted to just cut a big rectangle out, we would do 9.5 inches long by 5 1/4 inches high. And then from there, we would just cut out these 2 1/4 inch squares from either side. And that would get us our pattern piece to make a little fabric bin. All right, so now let's say, just for a second example, let's say we wanted to make a grocery tote. So something to carry our groceries in, a larger tote bag made of canvas or something. So I would say that I would want that to be probably about 14 inches wide. So that's going to be the bottom of the bag, 14 inches wide by, we'll say 4 inches deep. So that's a good amount to carry groceries in. By, we'll say, what's a good width for that? We'll say 17 inches high. No, that's kind of an awkward. Usually they're a little bit closer together. So let's say 15, 14 by 15, 14 wide by 15 high. I think that's good. All right, so these are the dimensions that we want to end with. And again, on this one, I am going to use, let's say I want to use a 3/8 inch seam allowance on this one, just so you can see different seam allowances. So if I'm doing a 3/8 inch seam allowance, that means that we need to double that up so that we can add it to the measurements later on. And double that would be 0.75. I don't know why I did it that way. It is 3/4 inch seam allowance. So that is what we would need to add. I mean, ultimately it is 0.75. So 0.75 we need to add to each of these, or to the height and the width of the bag. All right, so let's go ahead and start again at the bottom. So we're gonna do, we want it to be 14 inches wide along the bottom. Okay, so we want it to be 14.5 inches wide. We need to add in double the seam allowance, so we need to cut this to 14.75 inches. Okay, now we need to go ahead and add in the boxed corner portion, and we want that to be 4 inches deep. And we're going to take that in half, because half of it's going to be over here and half of it's going to be over here. So we're going to go up 2 inches and over 2 inches. So that's our box corner. So that's going to get us our 4 inches deep bottom of it. And then we want 15 inches high. So from here, we're going to draw another line up. I'm really bad at drawing straight lines. And that is going to be our finished height plus double the seam allowance. So we want this to be 15.75 inches. 15.75 inches. Okay. So now if we connect those, in order to figure out how wide we want to cut the entire thing, we need to again add the 2 and the 2 over here, plus this one here, the 14 3/4. So that is going to be 16 3/4, 18 3/4. And then again, if we wanted to figure out this right here, the actual width, or I'm sorry, the actual height of the entire thing, we would take this measurement here plus this measurement here, which would give us 17.75. So that means that we could go over to our fabric and cut out a rectangle that is, or I'm sorry, 2 rectangles, I guess, that is 17 3/4 inches tall by 18 3/4 inches wide. And doing that with a 3/8 inch seam allowance is going to get us finished measurements of 14 inches wide by 4 inches deep by 15 inches high. All right, well, I hope that helped. I hope that made some sense and kind of gave you some ideas of how to map that out yourself. If you stay tuned for next week, I've been trying to post 1 video a week, but if you stay tuned for next week, I am going to go ahead and make one of those fabric bins using the measurements that I did like in the first example, and we'll see how it turns out and how close I was to getting, you know, an accurate map out of how I want this to go and how that equates to what it actually looks like when I am finished. So make sure to stay tuned so you can kind of see how I implement that with cutting out my fabric. And make sure to subscribe to stay tuned so you don't miss out on future videos. And if you like this video, if you enjoyed it, if you found it helpful, I'd appreciate if you give me a thumbs up. That would be great. The more thumbs up and comments and everything that I get, the more this video can reach other people that might need the help or ideas, or, you know, just the more people this video reaches. So yeah, if you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up. and I will see you next time. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.